So, good afternoon. Indeed, we are reaching the end of day one, but almost, because I'm sure that all of you are absorbing and taking in the wealth of fruitful exchanges and inspiring presentation you heard today. And naturally, your mind is already looking at a détente, disconnection moment, stretching a bit, having a walk towards the reception in the City Hall. But stay with us for the last, actually, panel debate, because we are going to address one of the issues why most of us are here today, that is how to get prepared for the future, how operators are getting prepared for the future. So please stay with us. My name is Milo from Acqua Pubblica Europea, which is a network that brings together more than 60 public water utilities at European level. Many of our members are here today as well. And a network that was established some years ago to facilitate the exchange of best practices and knowledge between public utilities. And precisely within this work that we do, within this exchange, we have within European utilities, but also in other international fora like GWOPA, we know that the job of water utilities is evolving as a result of the combination of powerful transformation forces that we have been discussing actually all over today, technological development, demographic change, evolution of the regulatory framework, and of course, climate change. And we will have the chance in this last plenary debate to hear more from water experts, water operators all over the world, how they have been building their capacity to get fit for the future, what kind of strategy they are developing to ensure that their operator can address future challenges, but also maybe to bring, to seize some of the opportunities that this transformation take in, of course, while trying to continue to ensure the core mission of water utilities, that is efficient operation for sustainable management of water resources in an inclusive way, left no one behind. But before opening the panel discussion, I would like to invite our keynote speaker, Kaila Vaidavamurthy. I don't know if I really need to introduce him, not only because he's the Executive Director of International Water Association, not only because he is a renowned water expert with a proven track record of successful projects over the years, but also because he has been introduced in the previous session, so I don't need to introduce him again. Please, Kaila, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Milo, for the kind introduction, and thank you for GWOPA for inviting me. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and I think this session, as Milo said, is really about how water operators need to think and respond to the major transition that we're seeing within the water sector in response to some of the global change pressures. The transition that we at IWA are seeing is we're seeing the water sector moving to much more circular approaches, where we are using water multiple times, where we're recovering resources from our wastewater streams, and it appears as if we're moving more towards distributed systems and moving away from centralized systems. Now, this transition really requires a new level of leadership and innovation unprecedented in our history, where we, the water sector, need to be more creative and imaginative, more right brain thinking. It's a very different place in the brain from where currently we make most of our decisions. In all of this, I think the biggest topic that we're seeing is, for water operators, is wastewater, particularly in the global south, wastewater and sanitation. As you know, 80% of wastewater globally is not treated, and of course this creates many problems, public health problems, environmental problems, like water pollution. But now we're starting to see wastewater as a water source, something that will become very critical for water security. And almost all discussions that we're seeing around water interventions are being contextualized within the circular economy narrative, where we really seek to extract value from the resources embedded in the wastewater in such a way that it potentially can help us financially sustain our wastewater and sanitation operations, something that we've struggled with all the time. So when we look at the changes in perspectives that we're seeing, the first change that we're seeing is this idea of the productive use of water. And this is where we're asking ourselves, what is it we want the water to do for us? And how can we match the quantity and the quality of the water to that intended use? And what this is doing is it's moving us away from this notion that we should only use drinking water for everything, and that we can start to create different grades of water for different uses. And that means we can cascade or use water multiple times. This is an example from the West Basin Initiative in California, where they take wastewater from Los Angeles and they create what they call designer waters, waters of different flavors. So you have one quality of water for irrigation, where you maintain some of the nutrients embedded in the water. You then have a different quality of water for cooling, a different quality of water for refinery industries, and then you have a quality of water for aquifer recharge, mainly for saline intrusion. So this operation is using plug-and-play technologies to create different grades of water in different quantities as of when it's needed. So it's really this idea of using our used water and creating lots and lots of flavors of our water. Now, critical to this is to really have a systems perspective, and it's to look at all waters that flow within our water cycle, right, within the urban water cycle, and to recognize that all these waters are good waters. They're just waters of different grades or different qualities. And so when you start looking at your water cycle through this single lens, you can ask yourself, if I need some more drinking water, should I import water from afar, get more surface water or groundwater and bring it to the city? Or would it be better to invest in leakage management and demand management that frees me up high-quality drinking water? If I wanted to irrigate some land or to flush my toilets, should I import water from afar and bring it to the place where I need it? Or can I use my grey water and black water, treated or untreated, for those purposes? So when you start looking at this, you start realizing that you can meet some of your growing water demands investing in efficiencies from within your system rather than importing water from afar. Now, critical to this is modeling, and there's a lot of work going on within IWA on integrated urban water modeling, where we're trying to model water as it flows through this urban system. We're modeling the flows and the contaminant fluxes, and then we're able to match these different grades of water for different uses. We're seeing also innovations where we're trying to model packets of water as they flow through the system and assign digital ledgers to those packets. And those digital ledgers tell us how much energy is embedded in that water, what chemicals are embedded in that water, so we can match these different grades for these different uses. Now, I did some work a long time ago, not using packets of water, but using integrated urban water modeling, and this was for the World Bank, where we looked at Nairobi. And Nairobi's sort of natural perspective about meeting their future water demands was just to bring more surface water. This is SW1 and SW2 to meet their demands. But using these integrated models, we were able to show that there was water embedded in the system that we could free up, and it could meet the growing demand without building new infrastructure, and that the unit cost of that water would actually be cheaper. And it's being published in a book. Now, a lot is being said about nature-based solutions, and nature-based solutions can actually help you close the loop. You can use nature-based solutions to protect your water sources, to treat your drinking water, and of course to treat your wastewater, and even to polish it through things like soil aquifer treatment before it goes back into use. But while the public love these systems, because the public love and prefer green vegetation around them rather than concrete, engineers are generally a little bit uncomfortable with these systems because they feel that they're unpredictable. They feel that they experience seasonal variability, and engineers also don't know how to design these systems particularly well. And so most of these systems are being designed based on what worked somewhere else or using rules of thumb. So at IWA, we realize we need a lot more research and science on this topic. We need to be able to verify the claims that nature-based solutions are making, particularly in terms of their effectiveness, their efficiency, and their environmental and financial sustainability. All of these will be critical for the long-term success and scalability of these systems. And also, it's really important for us to understand the potential fugitive emissions that might be coming from these systems. We know very little about what emissions are emanating from the surface of these systems. Only then can decision makers in our sector make rational decisions about their suitability and deploy them in an effective and optimized way. The other change in perspective that we're seeing is this idea of waste as a resource. And again, if we look at the entire water system holistically, we can see that there is a potential to generate value from different parts of our water cycle. You see a lot of research in South Africa where they're using microturbines in the drinking water supply side of their system, where they're using microturbines to generate energy, but also they're acting as pressure reduction valves. In Northern Europe, you see heat being recovered from sewers and that being used to sort of generate and support heating and ventilation. In countries where the community is at a different elevation to where the wastewater treatment works is, you see microturbines being used to generate energy. A very good example is in Jordan at the Asmara plant, where they generate a lot of hydro as the wastewater flows from the town to the wastewater treatment works. And then, of course, the classical way of generating energy is at the treatment works itself, like biogas production. Also, with nutrients, there are different points in the cycle where you can generate value from value from nutrients. Fecal sludge management, there's a lot of work on nutrient recovery in the fecal sludge management area, but also a lot of work on nutrient recovery at the wastewater treatment works itself. But the problem that we face with this resource recovery reuse story is we don't fully understand the business models. And most of our water operators are unclear about the financial return of some of these resource recovery models because they don't fully understand the intricacies of the business model. So if you take this example, for example, this is phosphorus stripping to generate struvite, which is a fertilizer. Most people believe that the money is being made from the fertilizer itself. But when you actually look at the situation in detail, you have a community paying a wastewater treatment works to treat their wastewater. The wastewater treatment company may strip the phosphorus from their wastewater themselves, or they might subcontract that out. But really, the reason they do this is because phosphorus blocks up the return to activated sludge lines in a wastewater treatment works. And so really the revenue that these phosphorus recovery companies are making is they're reducing the operational maintenance costs for the wastewater treatment works. That's primarily their business model. Now, when they recover that phosphorus, they do generate fertilizer and sell it on. But if you were to think about, who is their main customer? Their main customer is actually the wastewater treatment works where they're reducing the operational maintenance. Their value proposition is that they're reducing the wastewater treatment works. Their side hustle, if you like, is that they're generating this fertilizer and selling it on. We don't fully appreciate the intricacies of these business models, and that's why a lot of these resource recovery systems are failing. The last sort of change in perspective is that we're moving away from this notion of having highly centralized systems to more distributed systems. Water is very heavy, so you don't want to move it long distances, treat it, and then move long distance back. And so we're finding that treating water close to where it's needed, using it, and then using it multiple times, so you don't have to move it, makes a lot of sense. Similarly, with resource recovery, recovering it close to where it's needed and using it close to where it's needed makes a lot of sense. So you see there's a general feeling that these decentralized units or distributed units that serve populations of around 30 to 50,000 people seem to be better than large centralized units. But these decentralized units also have another advantage. Where you have areas that are urbanizing, you can sort of incrementally grow your wastewater provision by adding modules over time. So you're not committing to a large centralized system well before it's needed. You're actually able to sort of add units progressively and grow your wastewater provision. Also, these systems have a degree of resiliency. When there's a flood or when there's a power outage, it doesn't knock out the entire system. So the errors don't propagate through the system, and you can isolate some of those failures. So these distributed systems are becoming sort of more popular in conceptualizing how wastewater might be in the future, and operators have to sort of grapple with this. It's not only in greenfield sites. Where you have existing infrastructure, most countries from the global south, where I'm from, we had colonialists who built a centralized infrastructure, and it's this pig space that you see. And what we did is, as our areas urbanized, we extended the centralized infrastructure built by the colonialists, and we didn't do a particularly good job. So we have sort of spaghetti systems that don't perform particularly well, low pressure water supply, sewers that don't go anywhere. But now there's a thinking that what if we were to ring fence that centralized infrastructure core? And then in these emerging urban areas, offer decentralized solutions. So you end up with a hybrid where you have centralized and decentralized coexisting. And you see a lot of this happening. This was some work I did again a long time ago in Uganda, in 2 towns for the World Bank, where you can see this is an urban area that's extending. We sort of closed that urban area, ring-fenced it, and developed decentralized solutions on the outskirts. And we looked at using water multiple times and generating some resource recovery. And we found, this was a desk study, but we did find that the cost potentially of building these decentralized units could be lower than extending the centralized infrastructure. And this was really a process to create awareness for our colleagues in Uganda about the potential for decentralization. The final thing I want to talk about, or I've got one more thing after this, is about digital, right? For us, we have a big digital program in IWA. Digital is really an enabler, right? It's not the end, it's just enabling us to do these clever things that we're going to have to do in this transition. And really what we see is an ecosystem. I didn't have time to go into this a lot of detail, but just to give you a quick idea, within IWA, there's a lot of research around sensors, the sensors that capture data. A lot of innovation because they're becoming smaller, they're becoming cheaper, and they can measure more things. We're seeing innovations in pipe probes that go inside the pipe, they move along the pipe, and they're able to detect leaks and assess pipe condition. And then in the other space, you have the whole area of how we process the data. We're generating a lot more data, and so data processing, modeling, and visualization is really changing, and it's giving us actionable decisions. We're moving away from mechanistic models. These are models based on sort of the equations of physics to more data-driven approaches, where we're using machine learning and deep learning AI to process both structured data, but also unstructured data. The newest iteration in all of this deep learning is, of course, OpenAI GPT-4, which is, the ChatGPT. And these can process both text and images and create an understanding that simulate the human cognition process. And we already see the water sector experimenting with this, particularly trying to build the capacity of smaller utilities. And then you have the smart devices that receive instructions from the models and can themselves implement those instructions. Pumps and valves that have their own onboard computers that are effectively acting as brains behind automation. And so what we're seeing is potentially in the future, silent running systems that sort of self-manage and self-regulate. Water operators now really have the opportunity to reanimate their assets as the cost of connectivity and the cost of controlling an object has really dropped. So the whole sort of IoT thing is coming to life. The last topic, and this is really the final topic, it's about readiness, right? When we talk about our sector trying to transition to this new normal, we need to think about how ready we are to make that transition. And there are many dimensions to readiness. It's just not about technology. Now, technology readiness has been around for a long time, maybe 12 years in Europe. And this is where you have a ladder, an evolutionary ladder. The bottom of the ladder is, an academic thinking about a new idea, and then they might do some lab work, they might do a pilot, a demonstration project. And then when you come to sort of levels of 7 or 8 and 9, it's when you're commercializing that product. So technology readiness is something that we're quite used to in Europe. But water is special because water is a system of systems, and we are dealing with public health. And so it's important for us to understand other dimensions to readiness: societal, organizational, and regulatory readiness. So when we think about societal readiness, we're asking ourselves, are our solutions addressing a societal need? Has there been enough effective stakeholder engagement and testing? And finally, are people willing to adopt the solutions, and are they willing to pay? When we look at organizational readiness, it's about the capacity of water operators, their infrastructure, their capabilities, their skills, questions around how they will integrate the solutions into their existing process, and what will be their pain to gain ratio. And then the critical one is really the regulatory landscape. Water operators can only really change what they're doing if the legislative or regulatory framework allows them to do this. And regulators are critical because they can hinder the uptake of innovation, but equally they can be the catalyst that sort of promotes and stimulates innovation. Now, readiness is quite complex, right? When you think about something, and it's not homogeneous, when you think about something like energy recovery, waste to energy, The levels of readiness across all those dimensions are pretty high. And that's why you see big uptake of things like, say, waste to energy. But when you look at something like, related to material pathways, something like, say, water reuse, technology readiness might be high. But the other dimensions of readiness are always low because there are perceived risks and where culture plays a big role. So we have to understand that if we were looking at something like water reuse, there would be no point keep focusing on trying to improve the technology. We have to improve the societal and the organizational and the legal thing. So just to finish, just my final thought, right, and this is quite important, it's clear that our water operators have to do some serious path shifting now in order to respond to global change pressures. There's no option for us. And for me, the global south is really the key. Because you see, adversity is a big part of our future challenges. In the global north, we're fine-tuning systems because we already have universal access. But in the global south, we don't. And so there's this very important but difficult equation. On the one side, you have a need for huge infrastructure investments because you have to give people their basic human services. But on the other side, we need to accept that this might contribute negatively to greenhouse gas emissions. So the big question is, can we do things differently in a low carbon way and still provide people with the basic services they need and deserve? People tell you the global south leapfrogged fixed wires of communication infrastructure, right? The mobile phones. So they can also avoid the slow, costly, mechanistic, and heavy legacy of centralized water systems by moving to off-grid, distributed, flexible, and circular systems. But can we also do this in a low-carbon way? This is a question that really troubles me, and I don't really know the answer, but I would be interested to hear from all of you. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Kala, for this very inspiring presentation that really condensate, distillate many of the things that we've been discussing today, but in a very compact way. You finished about readiness, and now let's see how to build this avenue to readiness with our panelists. And without further ado, I would like to invite to join me on here the panelists for our session, panel discussion. Eunice Tejan from the Greater Freetown Water Company in Sierra Leone. Please come here and join me on stage. Monica Weber Farr from the World Bank. Claudia Kassel from Europe, and finally Abigail Kemper-Knox, a consultant at Open City Lab. Thank you for joining us today. I will also join you otherwise. You see your shoulders. Take this mic. Without making a water disaster, maybe. So my first question to Eunice Tejan. So you are director for commercial services at the Greater Freetown Water Company Sierra Leone. You have been in this service, customer care, for more than 14 years and overall 20 years of experience in the water sector.
Yes.
What about, we have, thanks to Kala's presentation, we are picturing out the future, and also some of the questions that are still there that Kala left us with. From your perspective, on the ground, how your company has been getting prepared for that, what kind of strategy, and particularly from your standpoint, at the customer care relation, how you see in your daily business with customer the evolution of your job.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm from Sierra Leone, Freetown, Sierra Leone, West Africa, and we are responsible for the utility in the Western Urban. We have 2 utilities in Sierra Leone, but we are in the Guma Valley, and so we are responsible for the urban. And so our daily duties, functions, is to provide water to the people of Freetown, and also we take into consideration even the cost at a reduced cost. So with Guma Valley Water Company, we have a main dam wherein we supply about 78 cubic meters a day. And so we have about 3 other sources Already we are supplying about 25,000 people because in Freetown, customers 25, but we have about 1.5 the population in that country. And so our duties already is to supply everyone water. We make sure nobody goes a day without water supply, even though the water might not be enough. So our own main responsibility and readiness is to make sure we improve access to the people of Freetown, that the people of Freetown do have water supply on a daily basis, and that we are ready for the future, because already what we are doing is that we are already leveraging on data. Presently, all we do is we collect data to make sure that we know what's the problem. And as a result of that, recently we had a study wherein we identify the gaps, and we note that in some areas we do not have water supply as they would love to, because Sierra Leone is a place where in the western area you have the lowlands, and then going to the east you have the hills and mountains. And so most times we have problems, especially on the unplanned community. We have so many unplanned communities. So in this unplanned community, we make sure that even they're there, we make sure that we do have water. So we identify all of these gaps, and we already know that they need water. And we know that very soon, because of the challenges we have a growing population coupled with migration. Freetown is the cities, like everybody is moving to the city. And we also have an age network where most times we have repairs work, we have to be closing the pipes and give chance to do the repairs. Maybe that will take about 8 hours. And also, we have the problem of climate change. Already, we have a climate change agency. We are working on making sure that water is not affected, because everybody knows that water is life and everybody needs water. So already, GUMA is working on all of these and making sure that we get ready. And in the instance, we get involved, the people in the communities, that if you stay in a particular DMD, you know what is happening. You know the days you should have water. And I think our readiness is already at a top notch, because already in Freetown, we do not have enough water. That on the 24 hours, we cannot give everybody water. So already we are working on what we call the rationing, where we will send a particular day, this area divided the country, the city, into like 3, where we have the east, the central, and the west. We say a particular area will have water at 8 hours, the other 8, and like that. So we are already in readiness in all this one, and we are already working with all the community, and we are working also with the WASH Association in all of this community, and especially on plan, because in the plan, they want access to water, but most times it's quite difficult for us to go into this community. So what we do, we get involved with the community. And so we are working with the communities. Sometimes we give them training. Sometimes we go to the field, we get meetings with them. We explain to them what it will happen if there is a plan. We want to move into those cities. But presently, we have a lot of work going on. And so this works that is that we have more systems. We are giving more access. Presently, we are doing about 16 communities we have already identified as a result of the master plan done by the Aquatic, wherein we got a lot of funding. So we've already identified so many communities, and we have started identifying the gaps, and we have started putting things in place, because sometimes you have to relocate some of these people. And in unclaimed community, you want to relocate, say, you know what, you need to pay them for relocation. So we are already ready with those things, and we are already working and making sure that we improve the access. And even we are trying to close the gaps of the time, because another problem is the time. People will take more than 30 minutes to get some water, and we all know that you should not go above that. So we are working with all of this.
Thanks a lot, Eunice, for this very powerful account of what the challenge concretely means every day, and how differentiated, variegated is the work of a water manager. I mean, dealing with data, dealing with the technology, dealing with political problem, engagement in community, and you're all busy doing this time, all these things at the same time. I mean, I think also this food for thought about how to move from the sky of the perspective to the reality of what needs to be done. But you mentioned the importance of data, collecting data and managing data, how this is difficult and also this is important. And maybe on this, Abigail can tell us something more, because Abigail is a research consultant with a specialization and background on energy and sustainability, but recently she has been moving on also dealing with the water sector in particular, and part of your current project with Open Cities Lab is to helping municipalities to build up and to strengthen their database on knowledge about the customer in order to know what's going on the ground, on the city, where the people will need it.
Thanks.
Can you tell us something more about that?
Yeah, thank you, Milo. That's great. We are working with eThekwini Municipality. They've given a presentation today already. Unfortunately, they cannot be here, but we're working with them in partnership with Hamburg Wasser. And what we really need to do, since we've already achieved quite a high level of access, we're almost at 95% of our population with access to water, we need to think differently about how to recover revenue from customers. What do you do when they stop paying? And the eThekwini Municipality want to go further. They want to increase the free basic allocation of water, the subsidies, to households who cannot afford to pay full rates. They want to increase it from the current 6 kilolitres of water per month to 9 kilolitres of water a month. But we can't do that unless we have full cost recovery. We can't do any of these wonderful investments to mitigate against climate change, to be resilient, if we don't recover revenue. And part of our work is to unpack the tariff model that currently exists and to understand what is possible and what is affordable. There have been projects in the past that have been very successful in getting customers to pay again if they're in arrears, how to incentivize them to start paying again. But currently in eThekwini, we're faced with 50% of our water is unaccounted for. We are buying water from the water supply utility, and we are only recovering 50% of that water, which is quite difficult to think of in sustainability terms. So low-cost smart water metering will go a long way to identify the losses, but we also need to think about looking at improving customer relations, understanding what the barriers are for people to not pay, and especially in informal and rural customer base and areas. There's something, though, that informal customers have in common with refugee centers and areas that accommodate migrants or displaced people all over the world. These people do not intend to stay in this accommodation for a long time. They have temporary needs, they're in transition, and we need to understand that about them when we are trying to understand what they can afford and what personal investment they're going to make into their own habitat or their own accommodation. So how do we remove the barriers for such people to become paying customers who can also benefit from the subsidies? We don't necessarily want to reach all the people who are struggling to pay without also benefiting them with the subsidies. And in our municipality and municipalities across South Africa, we tend to rely on official statistics from the National Bureau of Statistics, but these statistics and data don't keep pace with the fast change in environments that accommodate temporary people, people in transition, or displaced people. And we need to think of creative ways of collecting data, utilizing big data, it's often talked about, but also, like Carla was mentioning, using modern technology and innovations to deal with real-time data coming from customers in the form of WhatsApp chats and groups and lots of avenues that not only benefit the water sector, but also benefit disaster risk management departments, electricity departments, other housing departments, and health especially.
Thank you, Abigail. I mean, it's continuing coming around this idea of the complexity of what to do with data, how to collect the accuracy or the discrepancies that we can get between different databases. I mean, before maybe arriving at ChatGPT, we still have the need to make a basic sense of this data. I don't know if Monica from the World Bank, a senior advisor, but also one of major contributors to the IBNet, so the benchmarking exercise of the World Bank, can tell us a bit more about that. I mean, you need to collect a lot of data from operators. Why is it important? what can operators do with this data and how you can help to navigate in this huge amount of data that are collected every day.
Thank you for the question. And it's a daunting one when the question on how to collect data, make sense of it, and use it for improvement is between all of us and drinks. As an economist, I can get very excited about data. As somebody who's worked a lot on management and using knowledge for change, I am also sometimes, afraid of the big challenge that's out there. And when I just look in the room here, we have people, not just on the panel, but also in the room, where some of you have sensors that can pick up every little difference between the water quality of this versus the water quality of that, a little bit like Kayla was describing the future brave new world of water resource management by utilities, and others who are struggling to even know how many kilometers of pipes they have. And in between, there's a great variety. Now, one of the things that in the World Bank, working with financing projects that look at about 300, 400 maybe utilities every year, we're realizing is there's practically no good comparators. So if I know that I am losing so and so much water, is this good or bad? And if it's good, what better can I do? Or am I already at my best? So this question of comparison is a really important one. Now, we've been running for 24 years or so something that's called IBNet, that a lot of you may know. It's a benchmarking platform that we used to fill by sending out survey folks into a utility. So I see some people nodding, they sit for a week with you, they collect your data, they disappear. Some pointy-headed person in the World Bank does some super smart analysis with this, and sometimes maybe if you're lucky, you find yourself actually in a data point somewhere. But we realized that over 25 years, the internet appeared, iPhones appeared, interactive data sources appeared, and so we've been redesigning that as something that people can use for their own data services. So you plug in not 110 data points, but just enough data to generate 15 KPIs. And that will allow you to compare yourself across. We've started testing that with the first 90 or so utilities, and we're finding you get some really interesting insights, not only from comparing yourself in terms of key performance indicators, but also, and here comes the interesting thing, you look at your management practices. I was sitting earlier today in a session of the Ethiopian utilities, and there's a lot of work going into management practices. What does it take to have a business plan, setting targets, managing towards these targets? But then also, again, is this a good management practice? What more should I do? How do I compare if I invest all of that time in collecting data and managing it and checking out how I deal with my customers, etc.? Or should I rather spend more management time on something else? So again, here, creating something comparable. One of the interesting things we found is that in all other sectors, private sectors, privately run sectors, manufacturing, production, etc., there's a very clear line between how well you manage your organization and how good your performance indicators come out. And you can show it statistically. There have been collections of data of thousands and thousands of entities of that. You can look it up on the Global Management Survey. We don't have that for us in the water sector. So the whole idea is that by looking at the correlations, associations, or even causation between management practices and data, you can figure out what do I need to do for myself in order to improve. Now, just one last word. Data itself is nothing but a number that sits somewhere, that is neither motivational nor interesting, nor is it driving performance changes or the system changes that Kayla has motivated. We all need to come around using data, not only understanding it's in context, but also then using it for decisions. And that's the big motivational and opportunity-driven conundrum that we are here looking at. Maybe not a conundrum, more perhaps the next big step.
Thanks, Monica. And I think this it's the right place to say that in GWAPA Congress, indeed, how to move from making sense of data and working together, cooperating between utilities, to learn from each other, also through the use of good comparison, an easy one, if possible, of great amount of data. So after the World Bank, we go back to utilities, and I'm happy to have next to me Claudia Castelxener, the president of EURO, the European Federation of the Water Services. Claudia is also the leader for water management quality user team at the German association DVGW, so is an expert, and as president of EURO also has a significant responsibility in shaping European policy, at least on water. My question to you is, following also what Carla's presentation, I mean, from your perspective, European perspective, what are the challenges that are more significant for you? They are mentioned that one that are presented by Carla, and what kind of tools and strategies you think are available already there for operators to address them?
Yes, thank you very much, Milo. Thank you very much for this invitation. And Carla, thank you very much for this very, very inspiring keynote. And you just addressed quite a lot of challenges I would also refer to from the European perspective. So yeah, we worked on Euro's strategy, and we came out with 8 challenges. I don't want to refer to them all. I just pick out some of them. And I would like really to say at the very, very beginning, to deliver safe and reliable water services 24/7 is a challenge itself. It's a challenge each and every day. And from the European angle, yeah, we had quite a really tough time in the last years, because the 2 major water industry directives has been under revision or are under revision. So it's the European Drinking Water Directive, which has been then launched in December 2020, and the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive is currently under revision. And both are ambitious, because the European Commission is very, very ambitious. And you know, Ursula von der Leyen with the European Green Deal and climate neutrality, energy efficiency, implementing the risk-based approach, which is a wonderful organization and management tool, but we have to get familiar with that. But that also leads me to one really main outcome and main conclusion is, and this has been also said in the presentations before, know your system. This is really key for water utilities, for water services. Know your system. And as I said, we had now these revisions which came up for securing drinking water quality with really new stringent quality targets. They are okay because they are recommended by WHO, and what WHO is recommending is valuable, and it's absolutely a key for securing health, of course. But to say it is key and is okay is only one side of these book with many pages, because we really have to see, and this is really one challenge we're facing, that water services are professionals. But with regards to water treatment, we are really facing, at the moment, really limits. And this is when we look, for example, at PFAS. It's a huge chemical substance group, which is in outdoor, in any outdoor code. It is used very widely, and here we really see that the common treatment techniques, that they really come to an end. So when we think of activated carbon, we have to think of reverse osmosis. And here we see that we need more water, we need more energy, and how to get then energy neutral, and what to do with the residues. So this really links to the next big challenge, and this is really tackling pollution. We are not only facing old known pollutants like nitrates or pesticides. We are detecting and we are identifying more and more micropollutants. And here again, We have to put in place treatment techniques, even for water services, where there was no need at all for treatment techniques, really, to tackle this pollution in drinking water production, but also in wastewater production. And here we also need the support, really, of government and of the local authorities, because when we look at the protection of drinking water resources, for example, the opportunities, the possibilities the drinking water operators have absolutely limited. So the operator cannot go to the emittent and says, please stop with that pollution, if it's an industrial discharge or it's from agriculture. Here we need really a strong, powerful support from the local authorities, so the water authorities and also the health authorities. And this is just to give you one example where, of course, the water services operators, they are professionals, but there are arenas and there are links really where we need the support of really strong governments and authorities. And this leads me also to the I come to an end, exactly, which is the resilience of water services. Quite a lot has been said to climate change, mitigation and adaptation. I fully agree with. To tackle with security risks is another point. And last but not least, I would really refer also to professionals. Yes, the lack of skilled professional we are facing. And we ran a survey here in Germany one year ago, and 85% of our members are telling us this is really a major, major challenge, and they would rank this challenge before IT security problems and digitalization. So really to address and to find skilled personnel is also a big point I'd like to address here. Thank you, Milo.
Thanks to you, Claudia, that for me at least leads quite nicely to the conclusion, some conclusion of this session, also because we really need now to stretch a bit and take some fresh air. But I will not close the session before giving the possibility, if someone wants, also from the panelists, to make a remark to Kala's presentation, if there is something that they find it missed from Kala's presentation or like to make differently. Any reaction from the public? Otherwise, maybe a reaction, yes?
I have a question.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
From the presenter, I noted something that he said that there are different ways of doing things between the global north and the global south. And when he talked of the fact that we need new ways, not to advance the already existing ones, then I asked myself a question of what does it mean to be new? Because if an idea comes, for example, from the global north and it goes to the global south, it becomes new. And you realize that most of the organizations doing projects in the global south come from the global north. Then it becomes like, whose idea is it, or what new thing are we talking about here? Because most of the time, the people in the local areas, they are not given an opportunity to come up with their own idea, and it is supported just like that. So, yeah, probably what do you think about that?
I think that's an excellent question. And what I'm observing in my role at IWA is that a lot of the clever innovations are actually coming from the global south. And we see, south-north knowledge transfer taking place. There's a lot of frugal innovation, particularly in the area of decentralization and in the area of non-sewage sanitation. And all of that is really coming from the global south, and also resource recovery in terms of non-sewage sanitation is coming from the global south. So I see both in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa this sort of ability to reimagine how water looks and what the water business is. And because they have this opportunity to sort of, because they're starting a little bit, particularly in the wastewater journey, it's a new journey. I think that they will, in the global south, we will start to develop systems that will inspire the global north to transition from what is really old, clunky, inefficient systems that we have in the global north, and they will transition to this new normal. But I'm very confident that the global south is leading the way. And in IWA, most of the innovation we're seeing is coming from the global south.
Thanks, Kale. Thanks a lot for your question. That is really, really crucial. Can I have your name?
My name is Judith Musa.
From?
I'm from Kenya, but I'm a master's student at the United Nations University.
Thanks. Very, very important question. Monica, you also had a quick reaction, maybe?
I just wanted to second what Kayla had said based on our experience. You're quite right. Innovation is innovation the moment you do adopt and do something differently or rethink. Also in our experience, the south-to-south learning, we've seen a lot of the innovation between Southern Asia, India and Bangladesh, and particularly East African countries through water operator conversations. I think this is a good question to ask also for the whole concept of peer-to-peer learning within water operator partnerships, the whole WOPS concept, how much north-south, south-north can actually flow back. But I have been in plenty of conversations where we've had, say, the Indian utilities stand up and say, look, the things from the north are too clunky for us. They will not work. And quite frankly, the water reuse conversation is coming from the south. So, and it's coming with force, and it's coming with technology, and it is coming with data services.
Thanks a lot, Monica. I really have to close also because I see the eyes of colleagues from GEOPA Secretariat, but I think that Monica's comments, it's very good to get a takeaway of also for future GEOPA work about how to rethink the WOP relationship beyond traditional mentor-mentee approach. I think it will be important that this has been heard also from some institutions like European Union, that is also a donor for many of our activities. I mean, to rethink in a very more symmetric and balanced way the WOP relationship, which is also a way, I think, to recall, as Claudia did, the importance of skills, the evolution of skills, and how WOP can also help on this by motivating young professionals. And finally, Claudia's remarks is also helping me to conclude on one thing, that some of the problems that are here, it's responsibility of water utilities on their management to adopt a strategic thinking, but there is also responsibility of institution and a political level to address some of the problems that have a societal dimension. And so the invitation for the next round is also to a bigger involvement of policymakers in our debate. I think GEOPA can be an ideal place to do so. Thank you. And now the stretching.
Just some information on getting to the reception. If you're planning to go, there are no more vouchers. Unfortunately, you can go outside and try to trade yours with someone if you want, but there are none available. But if you have one, you can get there by taxi. We've called a whole bunch of taxis outside. We go out and turn to the left.